So again, here we are. Again, it's beginning to be a theme and a tone for this new administration, and I don't know, maybe we can call it the smoke and mirrors tone. I remember when we first came to government back in 2016, and the hard decisions financially that had to be made because of the lack of funds that were available, on a time, arguably, when we had the highest revenue come to the province. And I remember, going into budget, and I remember a lot of members who were on this side, and the tough decisions we had to make because there were no funds left over from. And I quote a former finance minister and a former premier. He said, "We are flushed with cash." Anybody remember that famous quote? Flushed with cash, flushed with cash. That was said by again, probably a former premier, former finance minister, but only if we had saved some of that cash. The Future Fund, or the Rainy Day Fund, or a Rain, Drizzle and Fog Fund, as we would know here in Newfoundland and Labrador. But when we're elected here to this honourable House on behalf of the people, I would think that everybody would like to come and contribute to make the place better than what we found it. That's what we'd like to look back and think, that you're able to contribute to help enhance the lives of Newfoundlanders and Labradorians. But like my colleague just said, the changes that are being made, that are proposed here in this bill, are certainly, we don't support it. I don't support it, and I'm hoping that the people at home are tuning in, and the media are going to pick up, and they're going to talk about and really put some transparency on exactly what's trying to be pushed here through the House of Assembly, to what's trying to happen. This bill is just not about the finances. It's about how government manages risk, experiences power, exercises power, remains accountable to the people of this province. The original Act contained clear rules and thresholds around withdrawals. Bill 9 removes those safeguards entirely. That matters because in public administration, rules exist to prevent misuse, not to inconvenience a government politically. Removing restrictions creates a system based on discretion instead of discipline. Speaker, when government gives itself more flexibility without oversight, that is not efficiency. That is risk. And it's not a risk to the people here sitting in these seats. It's a risk to the people who are depending on each and every member elected here to secure their society, to help prepare for the future. I remember thinking again, if we had just a percentage of the funds and the money that when we took office back in 2016 to work with the situation, we wouldn't have been in such a hard situation. And again, the members there talk about debt, and they talk about debt, but they're talking about their own debt. The debt that we're still shoveling out of since prior to 2016, a time when we were flushed with cash, when Newfoundland and Labrador became a have province, removed from have-not status. But my golly, if we had been smart with those funds, Speaker, how much better would this province be? We wouldn't be struggling with rate mitigation that we have to borrow that were given from Ottawa. It was a Liberal government that negotiated with a Liberal government provincially to offset our power bills. And we're going to be speaking about the power bills, of course, tomorrow in our PMR. Very important topic facing every Newfoundlander and Labradorian here, especially on the island with regards to Newfoundland Power. Rate mitigation, $500 million comes every year from Ottawa to offset our power rates, and we know how people are struggling now. So if we went and took a streeter, and when I was a journalist prior to this life, they'd be called streeters to go and get the opinions of the public. Well, I hope the media will certainly go and get streeters and ask opinion. What do you feel about the Future Fund? Should the politicians of the day, who each and every one of us elected back in October here in this fine House of Assembly, should they protect the future of Newfoundland and Labrador by putting a future fund in place, by keeping it in place? It has been established, as we know, by our previous administration, previous Premier Fury. Should we be keeping the safeguards in that to protect the people of the province? Or should we just, at the timing which my colleague from Mount Sion raises, and I would argue she knows finances, and I've got no problem giving her credit, she does her homework, but she's talked about, of course, the very, very limited time that we were given notice to even prepare for this legislation. I mean, one would ask, is there an attempt to erode democracy? especially by invoking closure on bills, which we haven't seen since the previous PC administration, when Bill 29 was passed, when we passed Muskrat Falls, that we still have that albatross around our necks now. This bill removes regulation-making authority, removes requirement to invest into the fund, releases the fund 7 years earlier than anticipated, fewer tools to define how the fund operates, fewer mechanisms for public scrutiny, fewer opportunities for the fund to gain interest by removing funds early. We are told that withdrawals will appear in budget documents, but there is no requirement for timely public disclosure. Officials also advised they wouldn't recommend transitions from the future fund outside of the budget cycle. But the other side of this House has already shown a number of times now that they aren't all that interested in listening to the advice from officials. As a matter of fact, Speaker, the other side likes to pretend that transparency is behind everything they do, but the reality is that transparency delayed is accountability denied. The public should not have to wait months to understand how public funds are being used. This bill replaces structure, reliable contributions from oil revenues with a concept that has rarely been seen in this province: surplus budgets. That raises serious concerns. And on that note, too, I would like to talk about actually a quote from the Premier. Our Premier has been recently in the media saying that he's not willing to balance the books on the people. So, I mean, we know what budget process is like. So what does that mean? And again, I have to echo what my colleague from Mount Sion has said about the timing. Let's put this on hold. Let's talk about this after budget. They've announced the timing for the budget. We know budget, there's a lot of debate, a lot of mandatory hours that go into budget debate. So let's talk about it then. This isn't the first time that a provincial Conservative government has used high oil revenues for short-term political gain. I would argue that what got on us in this position in the first place. It was mentioned in the original debate on this bill, but had the province introduced this legislation when we first started collecting oil revenues, we would have over $3 billion in the funds today. And that goes back to that famous quote that we're flushed with cash. Well, we were flushed with cash, but let me tell you, Speaker, that cash was flushed pretty quickly. As a matter of fact, many people have even referred to it as drunken sailors, the way that money was spent. And again, I'll go back to 2016, the tough decisions. And Speaker, you would appreciate this. You would certainly appreciate this because you made a decision on your political career based on the decisions that had to be made on that side of the House based on the fiscal situations. And I'll say the word, the levy. We all remember how the levy and the harsh measures that were put in place. We also know that at a time another former premier had to write the Prime Minister because they couldn't pay the bills based on, or put salaries, people's pay, based on the fiscal restraints. So I always say we are a jurisdiction rich in resources, renewable and non-renewable. And if they're managed properly and taken care of, especially on behalf of the people of the province, we could be the best jurisdiction in the world. We have the best fishery. We have the best products, and again, we are rich with minerals, but we need, and I hear this often in my constituency, and places, tables around the province, and conversations with the everyday Newfoundlander and Labradorian about, the smart decisions that we have to be made. We have so much potential. But again, I mean, it's just strange, the timing of this, the removements again, and I will again read on the record what this bill would do here based on this and the bill kit. Bill 9 makes significant structural changes to the future fund. The amendments remove the definitions of extraordinary circumstances and non-renewable resource royalties. Add a new definition of surplus cash position. Change the rules for when deposits must be made into the future fund. Remove an exception to mandatory deposits that government says is no longer required. Limit withdrawals from the future fund to service the public debt, paying expenses related to the sale of Crown assets, and paying abandonment and decommissioning costs for oil and gas assets. Remove previous restrictions on withdrawals. Remove the regulation-making authority under the Act. I'll repeat that one again, the significance of that. And again, I hope the people at home are paying attention to what's happening here. And of course, the media. Remove the regulation-making authority under the Act. Re-establish the Future Fund with new deposit and withdrawal rules. And we ask why. And you know what? We're here, of course, we're talking in this debate now, and we're prepared to stay right until midnight. Because that's our job. It's our job to do what we can to protect Newfoundlanders and Labradorians with the legislation that is brought here to the floor of the House of Assembly. We've already seen the closure has been invoked here on the House when we talked about the proposed reduction in the gas tax that we put forth. And again, just to remind people at home, of course, and people who are watching, you know, when we recently debated the gas tax, it was an extension of the Liberal gas tax from 2022, which saw a reduction. Of course, our caucus put forward, as well as a third party, the supports to further reduce that to help with cost of living measures. It's all relevant. It's all relevant to our future, protecting our future and our presence for the people here. There are people here struggling day in, day out for basic needs here to live in Newfoundland and Labrador. And of course, we do know that the government did not agree with that further reduction. So, of course, we debated. We exercised our democratic rights here, which is in our standing orders, it's in our Westminster system. It's what we do. But the Conservative government invoked closure, which ultimately shut down debate. Shut down debate. So, again, you know, this is another piece of legislation that's brought here, but again, it's a theme that we're seeing here. But again, I want to encourage the people at home to tune in and to pay attention. And again, take to the streets, ask the people of the province about a future fund. When the government was on this side, many members on that side are on record saying it's a slush fund. So I would ask them now to stand on their seats, even the new members. Stand up and have your piece on behalf of your constituents, because they want to know, and they will be asking you. They will be asking each of you. So again, I look forward to what the other members would have to say and to speak out on behalf of their own constituents. And when they go back to their constituencies and get the feedback, because we all know our constituency offices are very busy, especially rural. When it comes to the things that we need, and obviously rural districts depend more on government resources, arguably, than what we see in the large metro areas. So go back to your constituencies, and I challenge every one of them to rise, stand on your feet, and contribute to the debate. The members had lots to say when they were on this side, but now they're all. It's a different tone. It's a different, I got to say, it's a lot of silence. It seems like it's over here carrying the load when it comes to debate. So I certainly invite them to stand and to go on record and to talk about this. That said, Speaker, I do know other people want to contribute to this debate. I'm sure it's not the last time that we'll get to talk about it. It will go to committee. And again, I asked, just like I asked in previous legislation debated on the floor, which is the MCP funding, which we talked about here in a PMR, using MCP funds to pay for political staff, political advising. We've asked them to reconsider that. We've asked them to reconsider the reduction on further reducing the tax on gas, which we've seen the Prime Minister do. We've seen the Prime Minister of Canada do that. So stand up. There's still time for the Premier to get up and, decide that we want to flip that around. And of course, we know we have a budget coming down. We know we have a budget coming down, the longest actually in history, apparently, according to the media. It's the longest, or one of, in quite some time. It's the longest in years and years, as opposed to COVID, when we had a pandemic, with the exception of COVID, when the world shut down, when we weren't allowed to do anything. And when a few of us came in here with limited debate, and you would remember we were like sitting with social distancing and whatnot. So we are certainly waiting to see what's going to be in that. But again, I would like to echo and call upon what my colleague said from Mount Sion. We don't need to rush this. This is very, very important. It's significant money that's at stake for the people of Newfoundland and Labrador. It's their futures. It's our generation's futures. Not for the people sitting here in these seats. It is for, remember, we are elected on behalf of the people of Newfoundland and Labrador, who put us here to make the best decisions on their behalf with the resources that we have. Again, I believe we have all the ingredients to be an abundant jurisdiction. And while this administration is in power, We ask you, and we want to work with you, make the best decisions on behalf of the people of the province. I applaud our former Premier for putting this future fund in place. If it was in place prior to 2016, it would be a different situation, and we wouldn't have to rely on rate mitigation from Ottawa to protect us from, and the sinking funds, that's right, for protect us from the debt. So again, when we talk about the debt, let's remind the members that it's their own debt they're talking about. We're still digging out from Muskrat Falls debt. We can't be. That is a fact. That is not an opinion. That is a fact. And again, we receive $500 million each year from the federal government to support people for their power bills. And I look forward to the third party's PMR tomorrow, because it's all relevant. All of this is relevant. It's all to do with cost of living. It's all to do with revenue. It's all for protecting the people of the province. That said, Speaker, I will take my place, and I look forward to the forward speakers. But again, I would encourage each and every member on that side, especially the new members, get up and speak on behalf of your constituents, and let us here represent their needs. Thank you, Speaker.